Welcome to the Whitwam Wealth Real Estate Podcast. Today's episode is Become a Landlord, Part 2.
Welcome to the Whitwam Wealth Real Estate Podcast with Scott Whitwam, your blueprint to financial abundance. Settle in as we explore the mindset and methods for wealth building through real estate.
Welcome back. I'm Scott Whitwam, and today's podcast, our topic is Become a Landlord, and this is Part 2. We want to become a landlord without going broke, right? That's partially true anyways. I don't know anyone who really wants to be a landlord. They want to listen to complaints, they want to fix units, they want to update, they want to market their properties. What we really want are the benefits, passive income, cash flow, high returns, and prosperity. And today we're going to finish breaking down how to become a landlord, a profitable one. Becoming a landlord is not what most people think, where you just buy a house, you find a tenant, collect rent, shazam, and you're rich. The truth is, being a landlord is a business, not a hobby. So today we're going to cover the last 2 points in this wrap-up. So point number 3, we want to talk about financing the right rental property. So when we start with this financing options, we want to, obviously find the perfect investment because, we need to know what it is we're trying to finance. Now, I generally recommend that people get some of their, we'll just say, ducks in a row, right? We want to get things lined up. So you're going to want to know what kind of financing you want to approach, because there's going to be several different options. And you want to do this, I would say, simultaneously for looking for your rental property. If you wait till you find your property to go out and try financing, sometimes you can be too late and your deal's going to disappear. But let's just say that you found your property and now you're actually ready to pay for the thing, right? So here's some common investor paths that you can take. One is a traditional 30-year non-owner occupied mortgage. If you have good credit and currently have W-2 income, this may be a perfect way of going. So to do this, you're going to want to talk, with people who operate in the conventional financing arena. You can find many lenders who do these type of mortgage bankers, brokers, traditional banks. They all may be willing to lend to you. It is really typical that when you're dealing with a conventional investor loan, that they're going to require 20 to 25% down, what we like to call skin in the game. For non-owner occupied properties, you're probably not going to be able to find down payment assistance. You're not going to be able to find, 3% down or 0% down on investment properties. They generally want you to have skin in the game because they know if the market starts to go bad, that the first things that you're going to just let go back to the bank are going to be your investment properties, but you're going to focus on the house that you live in, that you own, your home, right? So that's why on a home, you can find a lot of, zero down, low down, those type of things, because they know you're more invested in that. So they're going to want you to have skin in the game. You can get, long-term fixed payments. The rates are going to be a bit higher than a property that you occupy. And that's why you have to fully disclose that it's a non-owner occupied property. You're not going to be living in the property as a primary residence. And that's why when you buy a primary residence, you assure them that you're going to live in the property as your primary residence for a certain period of time because there's less risk. And so that's something that's very important. In fact, when you violate that, if you try to go, I'm going to buy it, I'm just going to tell them I'm going to owner occupy it, but I'm going to turn it into a rental, just realize that's mortgage fraud. And when I had the FBI on my radio program and we interviewed them, I had one of the guys from the mortgage fraud division, and it's something that they actively investigate. And you don't need to get into that. You're better off just to find a property that fits with the non-owner occupied rates if you're going down this road. So that's the conventional way, right? So you find the property, 20 to 25% down, work with a traditional lender, a bank, a mortgage broker, mortgage banker. The other thing you can do is what we call house hacking. Now, house hacking is a term that has come up in recent years, and that's where you purchase a property and then you live in part and rent out the rest. So if you're single and you don't mind roommates, You can start with a single family residence. You can just go out and buy the home on the corner, find a 4, 5, 6 bedroom house, right? You take the master and then you rent out all of the other rooms. And then what you do is you allow the rents that the people are paying from the other rooms pay your mortgage. You become not only your own tenant, but you also become the property manager of the property. You can also look at purchasing a duplex, a triplex, and a fourplex if you want to live in one of the units and rent out the others. Why is this important? Because if you live there, you're likely to be able to obtain better financing terms, because now it is considered owner-occupied. So your financing terms improve. So instead of having to get non-owner occupied financing, you're getting owner occupied financing. What does that mean? It means you may qualify for a lower down payment. Loans like FHA, 3.5% down. There's some conventional loans with 3% down, 5% down, 10% down. And one of my favorite is zero down VA financing. If you've been in the military and you have VA benefits, you may have bought a personal residence, but you may not realize this, that you may still have extra VA benefits available that you can use for, either buying a duplex and then moving into it, leave your current property financed, or you can sell it, take your full VA benefit, buy a fourplex, move into one of the units, and rent out the other 3. And VA says if as long as it's 4 units or less, it can qualify as an owner-occupied residence. And for many, this has been an incredible way of becoming a landlord. Whether you're doing just a regular house hack where you're buying a house and staying in one of the rooms and renting out the rest, or whether you buy, a multi, unit up to a fourplex. And then again, like I said, if you can do VA, get zero down. But there's a lot of conventional loans out there. It's changing in the marketplace all the time. A mortgage banker or mortgage broker can both help you find some of those options, because they have multiple, pipelines, multiple lenders that are wholesaling and can get you some of the greatest opportunities out there from that side, from the house hack side of things. Some have used this over and over to build rental portfolios. So what do you mean over and over again? Well, as long as you personally occupy the property for the minimum length of time that's required by the loan, and generally that's 1 year. So let's just say you buy a fourplex. You live in one of the units for a year. Then you go buy another fourplex and make that now your primary, rent the 4th unit, have all 4 of those units. Now you're moving into a fourplex. You rent the other 3, you're living in 1, and now you've got 7 units rented and you're living in 1. And I know people have done this over and over. They've done it with duplexes. They've done it with triplexes and fourplexes. They've done this and helped to build their rental portfolio. And if you're in this to scale, then let's say you get 2 or 3 fourplexes, you sell all of those, and then you can take that money and you move it into multifamily, maybe into an apartment complex type atmosphere where now you've got 50 tenants. So, you can use this as a stepping stone to scale up. But all you got to do is live in there for 1 year, the minimum length of time, in order to do that in general. You've got to look at your loan documents, see what the lender's requiring. There are also some other options that we call, portfolio loans, or DSCR loans, which is a debt service cover ratio loan. These loans are based more on the property's cash flow than your personal income. These are really helpful if you're self-employed, or over, your limit for borrowing on conventional loans. A lot of times when you got a lender that just goes, the cash flow covers the mortgage payments, and therefore we're going to lend you the money. And so this DSCR, which has become really popular lately, can be another way of acquiring rental properties, because it's relying on your rates of return. Rates can be higher in these type of loans like the DSCR and portfolio loans, but they unlock more deals for you. And as long as the numbers work, then the rate just becomes another leverage point. And so we don't want to necessarily look and say, well, man, if I bought it with this conventional 30, I can get, we'll just say, 10%. But if I bought it with a DSCR, it'd be 12, and yet if I lived in it, if I did one of these live-in ones, I could get it for 8. But if the numbers work, it really doesn't matter because it becomes, a way of getting into more properties. It can be another leverage point where we're using some other types of leverage that aren't our own money in order to get into properties. And, we're coming into an era. I mean, right now we've seen interest rates on at least the home mortgage side drop down into the 6.5%, which is really good. We believe that, in the coming months, we're going to see lower interest rates. I've seen investor loans at 7%. So things are starting to come around. The rates are going to get better and the opportunities are going to become more. Next, I want to talk about one of the things that is one of my favorite, and that's creative financing. Things like seller financing, subject to financing, joint venture partnerships, and hard money. Now these are more advanced strategies. I cover them more in my book, No Money Down, which you can see the cover of it right here. But in the book, No Money Down, I talk about some of these leverage strategies of how to buy properties with little or no money out of your own pocket and utilize financing that is already in place or money that the only thing you have to qualify with is the property. It's very helpful when you have these type of financing options. And if you've been in finance or you've done creative acquisitions, you have that kind of experience. And it really doesn't matter if you have the experience in real estate. Let's just say you've done creative financing on automobiles or businesses or whatever it is. If you understand the principle, it'll be just a no-brainer for you, and you can take it and bring it over here into the rental property market. If you've never done it before, again, you're going to want to learn a little bit more about it. It may not be the place where most people start, but that's the reason why I wrote the book, No Money Down, is to help give some information on how this can be done for the beginner. I love using other people's money, what we call OPM. It is so great when I can look and go, okay, I've got this much money, but if I use other people's money, I can do this much more. It's what we call leverage. It's the ability to lift something bigger than yourself, right? And it's really good if you're, beginning to build this type of portfolio and these type of things that you start to build your acquisition team. So what do I mean by that? To begin with, you're going to be the only player on your team, right? You're the chief cook and bottle washer. But to build your team, you just need to start networking. You need to find an investor network. That's where the other people who have experience are going to hang out. Experienced investors will be there. People who do financing for investors will be there. Investor-friendly real estate agents will be there. You'll find wholesalers and contractors and handymen, property managers. So you'll start to build this pool of people that become your team. And even if you don't ever use any of them immediately, you may need them later. So start collecting names and phone numbers right now. And then with that proper mindset that you're developed, right? And your potential deal and all of these things we've talked about financing, it will line us up for what's next. Now comes the part that will make or break most new landlords, and that's managing tenants and protecting your investment. So this is our number 4, managing tenants and protecting your investment. So let's get real. Tenants can make your life amazing or miserable. Good tenants pay on time. They take care of your property. They stay for years. Bad tenants cost you money, stress you out, and can destroy a house faster than you can imagine. The good news is a lot of this is under your control by the use of systems, by screening, by setting boundaries. And this begins with when you're marketing and screening tenants. First, we market to the kind of tenant we want. We never discriminate or treat people differently because of any disqualifying factors, race, religion, all those kind of things, right? Never. But we do qualify them on their ability to pay and likelihood to maintain our property, right? So we use online platforms like, some rental listing sites, the MLS. If you got a good real estate investor friendly agent, they can get your property in the MLS or social media. And what we want to do is we want to make our property look good. Take bright, clean photos. Attract the people who want to live in clean and attractive properties. Write clear descriptions. Talk about your rental deposit requirements. Now, some states limit what you can and can't do in that area, and your pet policy. Same thing with assisted animals, but you want to write your policy. Are utilities included? What are the parking spaces? Do their cars have to be inside? Can they be on the road? All that stuff. The second step would be have a clear criteria written down and valid under your state's landlord-tenant law, right? So it doesn't matter if you have a policy. If it's not valid under the landlord-tenant law, you'll never be able to enforce it. But before you talk to any tenant, decide what your written screening criteria will be, such as their income has to be 3 times the rent. They have to have a minimum credit score of 680, 710, 760. No recent evictions, maybe in the last 10 years. No violent or property damage felonies. Make sure your criteria complies with your fair housing laws and the landlord-tenant laws in your area. No discrimination based on protected classes, and apply it to all prospective tenants equally. I know sometimes it's like, well, I just have this feeling. I can tell you that you will get burned most times if you just go on feelings. You have to apply your criteria. Next you have to have, specific applications, do background checks. Always use a written application process. And it doesn't matter whether it's a digitally written process. You can use, Google Forms to do something, or whether it's a paper application that you send by PDF and they can fill it out. You want to make sure you run a credit and criminal check along with an eviction background check. And then there are reputable services out there that you can hire to do that. I have one landlord that I rent all his properties out for, and he handles all the back end. I'm the MLS guy. I just get his properties in the MLS for him. But he makes people pull a credit report themselves and submit it to him with a date stamp on it. And then he runs a company, I think it's TransUnion, that actually does background and eviction checks for him. So he runs it through all of those type of things. He doesn't pay very much for it. You need to verify income, verify employment, call prior landlords. A lot of people skip this, go, I'm not going to bother the other landlord. I can't get hold of the other landlord. If you can't get hold of the other landlord, force a tenant to tell them to get hold of the landlord and tell them you need to talk to them. You want to find out how they were as a tenant. You're not just looking for someone who seems nice. You're looking for somebody with a history of pain and stain. And then make sure you have a strong lease with strong expectations in it. If you're going to do more than one deal, I recommend hiring a lawyer to draw up a property management agreement for you, a rental contract. If you hire a property management company, the property manager is probably going to have a lawyer-created property management agreement. Most real estate jurisdictions have a lease, but those leases are made to be balanced between landlord and tenant. This is your business. You want to make sure that your tenant's rights are protected, but you want the lease to favor you. But this is a good place to start. Be aware of just downloading a free one off the internet. It may be very risky. It may not have the clauses for your state, your jurisdiction. It may be missing things that you need in order to make the thing actually enforceable. So I do not recommend just downloading one off the internet. And never rent a property on a handshake. Here in the jurisdiction where I'm at in Arizona, on a handshake, I can rent a house up to 12 months, and it is a legally binding contract. The only problem is you have to prove what you agreed to. So that's why it's important to have written documents. Your lease should be spelled out, the rent amounts, the due date, the late fees, who's responsible for the utilities, what's the pet policy, the rules about smoking, guests, parking, noise, and what happens if the rent's late, the responsibilities for the yard care and the maintenance, the pest control. Make sure you do walkthroughs, take pictures, make sure that they're date stamped. Do this with the tenant and go line by line. This is where you set the expectations about the how and the when to report maintenance issues, how to clarify response times. Emphasize that you're running a business. You're not doing favors for people. And then collect rents like it's a business. Set up a system. Just not when you think about it. Have policies. choose one or two payment methods that make it easy for your tenant, right? Have an online portal, do ACH or something similar, and stick to your late fee policy consistently. No endless grace periods. When you're consistent, tenants know you're serious and they treat the property and the relationship with more respect. Verify everything, right? So here's something else that's very important. It's the maintenance and the inspections of the property. What do you mean maintenance and inspections? Yeah, you should be doing regular maintenance on the property and utilize those as opportunities to actually check out and do an inspection on the property. Maintenance is where many landlords drop the ball way too often. A good rule is, fix small problems before they become big ones and expensive ones. Build a relationship with a reliable handyman or contractor that you meet at your networking meetings. Budget monthly for certain repairs and maintenance and updates. Don't wait till the wood's peeling to paint the house. Paint the house, keep it looking good so that you can maintain good tenants. Consider doing walkthrough inspections, once a quarter or at least twice a year. Build that language and that ability into your lease. Go and check in your property. If you have a property management company, most of them have inspection periods once a year. Say, no, how much extra will it cost to get you out there once a quarter to inspect my property and make sure they're taking care of it? At least twice a year. Document everything with photos and notes. Not only does it protect your investment, it also shows, good tenants that you're a responsible landlord, and they're more likely to stay longer. Lastly, handling problems and evictions. Eventually, you're going to run into an issue. I'm telling you, it's going to happen. Someone will be late on a payment. Somebody will miss a rent payment. Somebody will violate something in the lease. Somebody will do some property damage. Your best tool will be to have a clearly written lease with documented communication, knowledge of your local landlord-tenant laws, and then follow your policies, your late fees, your pay or quit notices, requirements, and the timelines. If the tenant stops communicating or doesn't pay, you must be willing to move forward with eviction according to your local laws. You're not being heartless. You're enforcing the rules of the business, the agreement that you both signed. If you're not comfortable with this would be another reason to consider a property manager. So let's recap what it means to become a landlord. We covered 4 big areas. Number 1, mindset and strategy. You're starting a business, not buying a novelty item. Know your why. Decide your level of involvement. Number 2, find the right rental, right? Look for properties where the numbers make sense, not just the price, but choose markets where the demand and growth are. Number 3, we talked about financing, using financing strategies that align with your goals, traditional loans, house hacking, DSCR, and creative financing. And lastly, number 4, we talked about managing tenants and protecting your investment. Market effectively and screen carefully. Use strong lease and set clear expectations. Systemize rent collections and maintenance, and if necessary, evictions. Hey, if you enjoyed this episode, share it with somebody who's been talking about buying a rental. And if you have any questions, we want to hear from you. We want to hear your deep dive into the house hacking, the screening of tenants, all of these type of things, because it might turn into one of our future episodes. That's all for this episode of the Whitwam Wealth Real Estate Podcast. I want to thank you for joining me. If you have not done it yet, go check out our previous episodes on related real estate investing topics. I invite you to subscribe today and be part of our growing community. You can always find the Whitwam Wealth Real Estate Podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeart Podcasts, YouTube, or wherever you enjoy listening to podcasts. This is Scott Whitwam. Be sure to join me on our next episode of the Whitwam Wealth Real Estate Podcast, where we're wealth building through real estate.